Hello, this is Neil Gutka. The topic of my presentation is brand storytelling. As someone who comes from a content writing background and someone who took to writing and storytelling at a pretty young age, it has always fascinated me how brands resort to storytelling to build their persona and image. And I've always wanted to delve deeper into that, and this assignment gave me the opportunity to do just that. For the purpose of this assignment, I decided to read a book that I'd been meaning to read for a while, but I'd kept putting it off. The book is called The Laws of Brand Storytelling by Ekaterina and Jessica Gioglio. The book was a fascinating read. As I was reading the book, I realized that it was filled with so much deep insight that I could not possibly include all of that in a short presentation. So for the purpose of this presentation, I have condensed what I thought were the most important takeaways from the book. So let's begin. Why is storytelling important? I would like to go back to our previous assignment, the digital media thought leader interview, where I interviewed Mr. Aditya Kuber. And he said something that really stuck with me. He said, as a species, we're storytellers. Storytelling has been fundamental to mankind. We as humans, we've passed on stories from generation to generation across centuries, and storytelling continues to be a constant. What has changed has only the medium of these stories. What used to be oral and written stories are now in digital form. And with time, I think marketing has also adopted the storytelling approach. Modern marketing is no longer just about selling a product or service, it is about building a connect. The audience today wants to feel an emotional connect or an emotional bond with the product or the brand, and they're just not looking at the saleability of that product or service. What is brand storytelling? So, brand storytelling can be defined as the art of shaping a company's identity through the use of narrative. So, it is basically, in a nutshell, you can say it is telling the brand story and thus forming the brand's image. It is meant to elicit an emotional response and establish meaningful connections. Yes, so the purpose of brand storytelling is to, help the audience connect with the brand at an emotional level and not just see it as, a corporation that sells a particular product or provides a particular service. It is a way of connecting with communities that share your values and beliefs. I think brand storytelling really conveys the values that a particular brand stands for and thus invites people with similar values into your tribe. Storytelling is what makes the brand look human, real, and relatable. Without storytelling, the brand would just look like a distant corporation that is doing business. But storytelling is what basically tells the audience that there are humans working behind this brand, and this adds to the human nature of the brand and makes it relatable to the audience. Now, this is, my favorite line from the entire book. That is, your brand is not what you say it is what others say it is. Thus, the purpose of brand storytelling is not just to tell a story, but to elicit a response to keep, the conversation going. Thus, you can say brand storytelling is not a one-time process, it's a continuous process. Every action, interaction, or communication that the brand undertakes, it contributes to its brand story. So this is, you can basically divide brand storytelling into two parts: the macro story and the micro story. The macro story is what paints the larger than life picture of the brand. It really defines its identity and the purpose of the brand. And micro stories, is there are plenty, are in plenty, and it are an ongoing process. Micro stories essentially feed the macro story, and communicate with the audience. This could be in the form of the company's website, social media, advertisements, or any other assets or communication that the brand puts out. It is very important that the micro stories that the brand puts out align with the macro story, and resonate with it, and build it even more. This is what a typical storytelling journey looks like for a brand. It starts with identifying the brand, knowing what the brand is. It's more of a self-actualization process where you understand what values, or what principles the brand stands for. Then the next step is to understand your goals. What exactly are you trying to achieve with the storytelling process, and how what the brand's values can align to that. The next step is finding your story. What is that interesting story that you need to bring out that would really form the brand's image. After that, the process is to craft the story. This is where all the creative juices start flowing. You want to bring out your story in effective and in a creative manner. Once you have crafted your story, it's time to share your story. The sharing, you when you share your story, you trying to reach as wide an audience as possible. So this is where you take decisions about what channels you want to utilize, and what exactly, and identify the audience that you want to reach. And the last step is to engage with the community, keep the conversation going. Just merely telling your story and just sitting back is not enough. You need to keep the conversation flowing, which is why it is important to keep engaging with the audience. So we're going to look at each of these steps in a bit more detail. We begin with knowing who you are. So, to understand what the brand really is, you need to answer the following questions. Why does the brand exist? What does the brand stand for, and what makes the brand different? So this essentially outlines the purpose of the brand, the values it stands for, and what really is what really stands out about the brand. This together forms the brand DNA. Now the purpose and the values of the brand, it can't be something as simple as selling a product or providing a service. It has to be your unique take to it. This is which is why the last question here is important. You need to identify what makes you different from your competitors or contemporaries. Here's a look at the purpose of a few renowned brands. Ford. So when you look at Ford, their purpose is not just to manufacture and sell automobiles. It is, in their own words, it is to open the highways to all mankind. Southwest Airlines believes in providing affordable transportation to the common person. Walt Disney wants to bring joy to children across the world. And my favorite of the lot is Coca-Cola. It says it wants to inspire happiness. Now, this is a brand that, sells, manufactures and sells a beverage that is consumed by over 1 billion people each and every day. And, despite of that, it equates its message, its purpose to bring happiness or to bring joy to the face of people. If eventually over time, you look at a bottle or a can of Coca-Cola, and the message is that this here's a drink that's trying to bring joy to people. It's equated with joy and happiness. The next step is to understand your goal. This involves outlining your strategy, deciding your approach, and then finally creating a storytelling framework. Strategy essentially involves, understanding the brand's history, understanding where it is positioned today, and what, where it wants to go in the future. It's essentially what, the brand is trying to achieve through storytelling. That is what is outlined in the strategy. The approach is basically, a framework to, bring it to execute the strategy. So the first step there involves understanding the audience, looking at consumer insights. This helps the brand understand, how the brand is currently being perceived by the audience, what the audience thinks about the brand. And this basically should form the crux of the approach, based on where the audience wants to go, where the brand wants to go from it. The next step is to decide the brand's voice and personality. It's about how the brand wants to present itself to the audience, and then identify what is the information, what are the values that of the brand that need to be conveyed through the story. And lastly, is the storytelling framework. This is really where, the digital aspect of things comes into the picture. You decide, the mix of content that you want to create. This could be videos, blog posts, social media posts, the different channels you want to utilize, the frequency of the content that you're sharing. This comes through the content calendar. And looking at other things like, the budget that you want to put into, that you're investing into the storytelling process, the partnerships that you're going to make along the way. This could be with other brands, or other stakeholders, maybe even the audience. The next step is to find your story. Now we've understood the purpose of the brand, the values of the brand, and what really differentiates the brand. Now we need to weave a story around all of this. The first step here would be to find your hero. Now, the hero of the brand does not necessarily have to be the founder or the CEO of the company. It could be anybody. It could be the consumer. It could be the employee. It could be, a supplier. So you need to find out who you want to revolve your story around. That is essentially the hero of your brand. The next step is to listen to your audience, hear about what the audience is saying about your brand. Very often, your story just could come out of that. It could be, a compliment that someone in the audience pays to you, a pain point, a complaint. So you really need to identify what is it that you need to focus on from the audience's perspective. And the last one is go beyond the obvious. Obviously, there are no rules to storytelling. Storytelling can be conventional, or it could be extremely unconventional. Uh, so, I mean, you don't really have to relate your storytelling to your product or service. Sometimes, storytelling does not try to, does not try to sell the product or service at all. Again, going back to the Coca-Cola example, we're not, in its brand storytelling plan, it does not talk about the beverage, it talks about happiness. So yeah, this is, that is in a nutshell, going beyond the obvious. Craft your story, get creative. This is where, you're really trying to make your story as effective as possible for the audience. uh, Again, like we discussed, every micro story has to be consistent with the macro story. So your story has to be consistent with the purpose and the value of the brand. It's extremely important that attention is paid to this. Otherwise, the whole purpose of storytelling is lost. The next point is to keep it simple. We're living in an era of short attention span. If your story is too complicated, or too difficult for the audience to keep up with, they're going to lose interest. So you need to craft a story that is easy for the audience to absorb. So it is essentially making it simple, making it relatable. If you decide to keep it extreme, like if I make it extremely highbrow or take a corporate tone, it probably won't work because the audience won't relate to it, and the audience might find it a little too complicated. So yeah, so this is a mantra that you need to keep in mind. Your story has to be simple. Then go visual. I mean, I know there are a lot of mediums of communication today that, like, which are not visual. This could be radio or podcasts, but no, none of them really have the effect that visual medium does. So it's important that visual medium is part of your storytelling mix. This could be videos, or could be images, comics, or infographics, but it's important to have a visual element involved. When we talk about visual, it also, you could also talk about the branding and the logo that is created. That is also what adds to the visual identity of the brand. Then the next step is extremely important. It is about being ethical. When you're talking, when you're creating your story, you need to understand, you need to keep in mind the sensibilities of various religions, races, people of different sexes and sexual orientations. It's important to respect every belief, every sensibility, and not you know not insult them in any way. So it's important to be ethical in your storytelling. The last step is to walk the talk. So it's not just about narrating your story or conveying it to the audience. It's about actually living that story. So like I said, every action that the company takes contributes to its story. So a company needs to constantly keep in mind the brand, the persona or image that it's trying to promote, and all of their actions need to be aligned to that. That's what is meant by walk the talk. Share your story. Now, this is where you decide your channel. These could be digital or otherwise. You need to come up with an appropriate channel mix, and for this you need to undertake research on what which channels would be the most appropriate for your brand. Then the next step is to customize your content. Of course, you're going to be promoting your content across multiple channels, but that does not mean you promote the same kind of just share the same content across different channels. It's important to study each channel in detail, understand what is unique about these channels, and then tailor your content accordingly for each channel. And then of course, this is, I think, something that all of us would relate to. Don't over brand or over advertise. All of us have been in a situation where we see an ad or a piece of branding way too much that it starts to get on our nerves. So engaging with the audience is an organic process. It's a gradual process. You cannot force it. So if you're going to over brand or over advertise, it's going to spark a negative reaction. You'll not be doing yourself any favors. And finally, engage with the community. This is important because like we said, your brand is what others think it is. So it's important to keep the conversation flowing. So this involves acknowledging and responding to the audience. This could be something as simple as acknowledging a compliment from a customer, or responding to a complaint from a customer on social media. So this just lets it's important. This lets the audience know that they are valued, and that their concerns and their feedback is being heard. This essentially helps build the rapport between the brand and the audience. And then the next thing is surprise and delight. Every now and then you need to do something that makes the audience happy, it's about going the extra mile for the audience. This could be something as simple as when you go out to a restaurant for dinner on your birthday or your anniversary, and the restaurant surprises you with free dessert. It's about going the extra mile to make the customer happy. So here are a few common misconceptions that you shouldn't fall prey to while, drafting your story. The first is, if a story is not remarkable, it's not worth telling. Your story does not have to be dramatic or funny or inspiring. Your your story should really, shape the brand. It's about telling the brand story and thus shaping the brand's image. So it's a way of letting the audience know what your brand stands for, what your brand actually is. So it does not have to be, a story that is, that is supposed to make headlines. It's a story that conveys what the brand truly is. Our stories should make everyone happy, and not every story, it's not always about getting a positive reaction. It's more about, again, it's more about relating to the brand. So, your stories should essentially help the audience relate to the brand, understand the brand better. It's not about making the audience happy. Our product is boring, no story will make it attractive. I mean, whatever product it is, there will always be a community that is loyal to that product. That is probably why you are in that business in the first place. So, even a company that is selling a B2B software, that is something, which on the face of it is not exciting, but they could have a good brand storytelling structure in that place, which adds to their brand. So, it really doesn't depend on what product you are selling or what service you're providing. You could still have a great brand story that, adds to your brand. And yes, so we conclude, this was the conclusion in the book. There are no laws to storytelling, in a book that is ironically titled The Laws of Brand Storytelling. So yes, I mean, there is nothing that you should feel the need to conform to. There is no template or guideline that you really need to follow. Storytelling, I think, should come from within. It should come from the heart. And I mean, there are really no limits. Your story could really be anything. Yes, so we finally come to the book. This is the book, The Laws of Brand Storytelling by Ekaterina, Walter, and Jessica Gioglio. This is available on O'Reilly Learning, which is free for all Northeastern students. You just need to register on O'Reilly with your Northeastern email, and you'll be able to access this book along with a lot of other resources. I definitely, if you have an interest in brand and marketing, I would definitely recommend this book. It's a wonderful read. Finally, to end my presentation, this is a comic that made me chuckle. Again, I've borrowed this from the book. Thank you.